Three films, three gateways, one descent into absolute terror. I'm Chase with AV Pop Culture, and today we are here to do a deep dive 4K review into the recent release of The Beyond by Grindhouse Releasing. But we are also here to discuss my first ever experience watching all three films in Lucio Fulci's Gates of Hell trilogy. So pop that tape in. I got you. Let's go do this. In the decaying twilight of the 20th century horror cinema, few visions were as nightmarishly poetic or as unapologetically grotesque as Lucio Fulci's Gates of Hell trilogy. Comprising the City of the Living Dead, The Beyond, and The House by the Cemetery, these films form a loosely connected fever dream, where logic buckles under the weight of the surreal, and the veil between the living and the dead is razor thin. Dripping with atmosphere, drenched in gore, and propelled by an almost mythic sense of dread, Fulci's trilogy isn't just horror, it's a descent into rot, into madness, into the kind of cinema where the rules just no longer apply. And for those brave enough to cross that threshold, to open those gates, there's no guarantee you'll return whole. These movies drip with atmosphere, surrealism, and gore-soaked nightmares that play more like waking fever dreams than traditional horror. For some, they're a masterclass in atmosphere and dread, but for others, they might be a little too slow, a little too surreal, a little too much. So here's the real question. Does The Beyond work for everyone, or is it for those who embrace horror as a heart form of gore and shock value? One thing's for certain, thanks to these 4K restorations, the trilogy has never looked more disturbingly beautiful. All right, so the Gates of Hell trilogy, The Beyond, my first ever watching experience, and I definitely have a lot of thoughts. We got it set up in here because the mood has to be right. Your mindset has to be right when watching Lucio Fulci. I realized that when I was watching it, that it is very similar in a lot of ways to how your mindset has to be when you watch David Lynch films. And when you come at it like that, and I did so on my second watching, I got a little bit different perspective. So I watched all these movies twice before I did this. And we're going to dive into the 4K and all that, but I want to talk about this movie because this is a contender of 4K of the year. It's up there. I don't think it's quite to Reanimator or Convoy levels, maybe a couple others, but it's definitely going to be in the top 10 by the end of the year. There's no doubt about it. So I'm going to go ahead and say that right now. And that comes as someone who is not a big Fulci fan, so I'm not biased because of that. So we're going to get into the 4K quality. I'm going to show you some clips from the 4K, but I want to talk about the movies first. And I want to start with The Beyond because that's the big one, although I do have the others too, and we're going to talk about those. The Beyond is not the first film. It was the second film. And some stories, I was sitting here trying to think of a headline. And for me, it's some horror films tell a story, but The Beyond just dares you to try to survive a nightmare. That's what's going on here. It was released in 1981, and it's literally a descent into absolute batshit crazy madness. It like takes you into the afterlife, a terrifying version of the afterlife, and it really defies logical explanation, but it is also beautiful to look at in some ways, but absolutely brutal and relentless. And I am not a gore hound, so I'm going to say right now, Fulci has always been on the outs with me a little bit because of that, even as a horror filmmaker. But if you take it into the form of a nightmare and very surreal, kind of like watching a David Lynch film, it changes it a little for me. So this is actually the second chapter in the unofficial Gates of Hell trilogy. That was kind of said they were a trilogy after the fact. But this thing kind of scraps a traditional horror narrative in any way. And like I said, it operates on nightmare logic where the plot, performances, all of that stuff kind of takes a back seat to atmosphere and instilling like dread into you. And atmosphere is something that draws me in. I'm a big on atmosphere in a movie. And I honestly think these films would rocket up my favorites of all time. And I know this is going to kill some of you when I say this, if they tone down the gore. Like it goes on too long, in my opinion, in a lot of places. So it kind of takes me out of the movie at a certain point, because at a certain point in a nightmare, you would wake up when it goes like to a certain point. And I think he gets to that line, toes that line, crosses that line, and it goes too far. And so then it's like uncomfortable to watch, and it takes me out of that atmosphere that's incredible. That's my perspective on it. And that's kind of a recurring theme with all three of these for me. This one is set in Louisiana. A woman inherits a decrepit hotel. She's unaware that it sits on one of the 7 gateways to hell. You might expect he would have done 7 of these movies, since he insists there's 7 gateways to hell. But it employs that nightmare logic for everything, but you get... It's not like just a horror story that follows. This woman is like, she's going to deal with the apocalypse on some level, and it's just filled with oozing wounds and surreal landscapes and haunting imagery that kind of stays with you after the movie is over. And unfortunately, that's what you remember mostly. And I've watched it twice, and the plot is paper thin overall. So it's more style over substance. And I'm going to do a whole video talking about my thoughts on Italian horror, so I'm going to just leave that. But like the MOS sound, like recording mid-out all sound, like recording without sound and then dubbing it back in later as a filmmaker, is something that also just takes me out of a film. And it reminds me that I'm watching a movie rather than getting lost in this atmosphere. So that's a little bit of a knock on it as well. But this one is definitely, to me, like kind of just super strong with the gore. You got the acid scene, all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about this one a little bit more when we get to the 4K review. But I do want to touch on the other two real quick, since this is my first time watching these two or all three of these films. But we're going to start with next. I'm going to tell you which one's my favorite at the end. This one I also have on 4K. It was sent to me as a gift. This is City of the Living Dead. And this is the first one in the trilogy. So this one's vintage 1980, kind of like me. And he cracked open the Gates of Hell trilogy with City of the Living Dead. Again, it's kind of nightmare logic, but in this one, you get a small town creepy atmosphere of Dunwich, and that's a recurring like town again and again in a lot of like horror movies that are kind of otherworldly, Lovecraftian inspired. There's even a film, The Dunwich Horror. But I love the small town atmosphere, and he makes it clear from the beginning, establishing these, that he's not into jump scares, all that kind of stuff. or even traditional horror storytelling. These films are all about chaos and entropy, like the decay, the dread that creeps like just under your skin. What's wrong? What's wrong? Like they're the evil that it lurks beneath that we all know is there and don't pay attention to. Cosmic horror almost. Hell trying to push through to our world. All that kind of stuff where it escapes in little spots. This is something Stephen King talks about. This is something H.P. Lovecraft talks about. Something I kind of believe in. So it gets me in that. But again, you get this apocalyptic horror. You get all that stuff that's kind of like unforgettable. You get the dreamlike sequences. It's cryptic. It's all that stuff. But the gore is so extreme. It reminds me that I'm watching a movie and takes me out of it instead of letting me get lost in that to where it makes me even more scared, eerie, feeling all that kind of stuff. But I mean, if you're a lover of like surreal type horror, if you're a Lynch guy, like thinking of it in terms of Lynch pulled me back in to watch them a second time. Even after I talked to Daniel at the Cobweb channel about this, the ending of this one is so cryptic. It's just like, okay, it just ended. But I would say, like, if you're a fan of Fulci, if you want to kind of experience that surreal horror, and if you like gore, apocalyptic horror, that kind of cosmic, we're all part of this bigger thing and this evil's pushing into the world kind of vibe, it's essential viewing. I think City of the Living Dead is my favorite of the three. I'm pretty sure of it. But I also wanted to talk real quick about The House by the Cemetery, which is the one that I don't have. And I admit I had to stream it because I don't have it. And when you think some houses, like when you think of like Amityville Horror, some houses have a history. Well, House by the Cemetery still has something evil living in the basement. And some very weird dubbing. This is sort of like the final chapter. I think this came out in 81 or 82. It is a quieter overall movie, I would say, than The Beyond, because I watched them back to back. It's maybe a little more grounded in reality than City of the Living Dead, but man, it still has all of that quintessential like existential dread. A family like moves into a house in New England. They're unaware that beneath the house is a mutilated surgeon, Dr. What's his name? Dr. Freudstein. I think that's what it is. I've only seen him twice, guys. And he's very much alive down there, and he's living in on the flesh and blood of the living. And yet again, it's kind of like this gothic, nightmarish fever dream. It's very disjointed, very mysterious, and downright illogical. Like the way they react to some things in here and take them in stride, like, oh yeah, that could happen. It's normal. It's totally messed up and just, it's not logical at all. I mean, this is kind of like Fulci's idea of a haunted house movie, but told through the like lens of a fever dream nightmare again, with all like just kind of random images. That's what I kind of get from his stuff. But there is that ambience there that's creepy. There's a lingering tension in the movie. And of course, you're going to have bursts of like grotesque horror because that's what he does. I mean, with him, it's not just like what's in the basement that's going to get you. It's what he leaves in your imagination. And it's because of that, like, I wish that he would do a little less on-screen gore. And I realize, y'all, that's what he's known for. But he's so good with the imagery and everything. If he cut it, if he restrained himself a little bit to let your, like, set up the gore, start to show the gore, start to show the things, like put some of it on screen, but then go away from it to let your mind and your imagination fill in the rest. I think it would just, for me, it'd take it to the next level of filmmaking rather than I put it down sometimes with like schlock shock cinema, because that feels like he passed going for that, and that realism that would have made it even more scary and let your mind wander, because nothing you can put on screen is as scary as what your mind can fill in. So, but he takes that opportunity away from you by constantly lingering and showing every single thing. If he cut away and let it go and let your mind go, I think these would be 10 times elevated and 1,000 times scarier. Because at this point, like when it gets to a certain level, it's just, you're just watching makeup effects. It doesn't do it for me anymore. Maybe that's because I'm a filmmaker, so I look at it from that side. So maybe that's it. And I'm a writer, so I would cut away. So maybe it's just my perspective. That's all I can give you. That's what you're here for. But the pacing is slow on this one. It's not like the other one where it's like, this is Fulci, the City of Living Dead, where it's like, this is Fulci's idea of hell. Welcome to Dunwich, baby. This one is a bit slower. The characters are super thin in this one. I mean, he's going to trade plot all the time, and that's fine. It's close. It's probably number 3 for me. I would probably say City of Living Dead is 1. The Beyond, it's very close between The Beyond and The House by the Cemetery for me. What comes in second, because I do like haunted house movies, although you could say The Beyond is a haunted hotel. So there is sort of my review. I would City of the Living Dead is number 1 for me, and then I would probably say The Beyond, but in like maybe the dubbing and some things like in The House by the Cemetery kicks it to number 3. So that would be my rankings. Now, let's jump back to The Beyond, because the 4K here is incredible. I'm sure you guys have seen all this by now. It's a limited edition, all this kind of stuff. It is absolutely loaded. I watched the 4K composer's cut. They did an interview with the composer. It's got new music in there. I watched both cuts. I thought the composer's cut was superior. I thought it looked better because there's some color differences in the beginning, and I thought the music was better. I thought the composer's cut was better in the story, and I think they're traveling around showing that. So this comes with like this booklet here that is supposed to be like the book in the movie, and then you've got these pages, and it's got all the different. Let me put this booklet down. It's got all the different artworks from different releases of this in here, which is super cool. And I know a lot of you guys have seen this by now, but I wanted to do a full review of all of these because I've never seen him before. So you've got, this is a 6-disc set, I believe, or 5-disc. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I was right the first time. 6. And you've got the different cuts of the movie on 4K. It's from the original Technoscope camera negative, 5.1 DTS master audio, loaded with special features. You have a bonus DVD, 7 Doors of Death, Notorious Aquarius releasing version, which is interesting. You got a bonus CD of the soundtrack, and you've got the book here. Also, will say that, and the book is super cool. I will also say one of the most fun ways to ever watch this movie is there is a commentary with the lead actress and the lead actor, and they're like drunk from having too much wine at lunch before they did this recording. And the one guy is British, and he's slurring his words and just cutting her off, and all of it. Man, it is hilarious as shit. It is a high recommend. Like, if nothing else, I would keep it just to watch that again because it is so funny. And they alternate back and forth between thinking, trying to be serious and all that kind of stuff. And it's so funny. And they're not politically correct at all. And I love that. And they say they thought the movie was going to be shit. All this kind of stuff. It is such a fun listen. It made the movie go by 10 times faster. I'm not going to lie. But the 4K restoration of this thing, it's going to be in the top 10 of the year. I don't think it's quite Reanimator, different level. Convoy, different level. There might be one or two others. It's definitely going to be in the top 10, probably the top 5 of the year as far as quality of the 4K release. You can just see the colors. Like, I had Tubi to compare it to in the non 4K cuts. It's completely light years different. Hopefully I'm showing you some footage as I'm talking about this. Remember, that's just me recording my screen when it comes to the 4K footage, all that kind of stuff. But the colors pop. The sound sounds so good with that new score. It does sound great. I do have a little problem with Italian horror, and I'm going to talk about Italian horror. The music cues and the sound effects cues are just so jarring and so loud. It's almost like cheap jump scares to me, which he's not going for jump scares in the movie, but when you put these sound effects in and stuff, it just becomes like cheap jump scares because it's so just blah, loud out of nowhere, and it jumps me out of the movie. And the music cues can be a little overpowering too. I mean, I've done a lot of film scoring in my life. It's not my favorite thing to do, but like, they need to go with a scene, not be the scene. And Italian horror is guilty of that sometimes. And I'll do a whole video talking about my thoughts on Italian horror, because overall, it is a whole thing of itself. But this is a high recommend 4K if you are a fan of this movie, if you're a fan of Lucio Fulci. For me, it's still just, it's overall not my thing. The Gates of Hell trilogy, I like them enough to keep them, study them, watch them more, let them try to grow on me, David Lynch style. I watched them with that eye. I'm telling you, watch them with that eye if you're on the fence. But I just keep being left wishing he'd have cut and not gone schlock gore and let my imagination make it 10 times scarier than it was. And other than that, though, incredible 4K release. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of reviews on it, but I wanted to talk about all of these. And that's what I got for you this time. I hope you enjoyed it. A little opening, our entrance, my first entrance into Fulci's Gates of Hell. So that's what I got for you this time. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. It helps out the channel. If you would like to help support the channel, you can join at my YouTube link and become a channel member, or I would push you to my Patreon link, because I can do all these reviews and everything uncensored, uncopyright worried thoughts over there, and it's a whole different ball game. But no matter what, you're going to get your name and lights on every video wherever you join. You're going to get special members only videos, behind the scenes looks at my filmmaking, and so much more. And it all goes back in the channel. And y'all, I really do appreciate it. But until next time, be kind, rewind like always. This is Chase with AV Pop Culture. And I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.